We know there are exceptions to the rule, but in many cases it is the mom who facilitates the learning of the children. The father is often the primary or sole breadwinner. Starting home education can be a frustrating and challenging time, especially if the parents do not have the same expectations. Homeschool Lounge invited 4 dads to talk about the subject, the role of the dad in home education. Marwaan Abdul lives in Cape Town and he and his wife home educates their 4 children for the last 4 years. Victor Sabbe lives in Hermanus and he and his wife have 4 children and they've been home educating for 9 years. Werner Schmidt is from Chili Bloemfontein and he and his wife homeschool their 2 children and they started already in the preschool years. Their children are now aged 9 and 7. Peter Reynolds is from the East Rand and he and his wife homeschool their 2 children aged 8 and 6.
Good evening, everyone. With regard to husband and wife, who actually came up with the idea of homeschooling?
I think I'll start. Well, I watched a documentary about homeschooling called Indoctrination many years ago, and we had friends that homeschooled, and I looked at our friends' children, and I looked at this documentary. Then I sort of started looking at homeschooling in a different light, and we started to investigate it. So I'd say I sort of came on board first, and then the important thing I realized is that if we were going to homeschool, that me and my wife had to be in agreement. So I had to initially give her a bit of space to also understand what homeschooling was about, and then also to buy into it. And once she was on board and we were both in agreement, and then we started homeschooling.
Okay. And Werner, your experience similar? Or?
Marwan, from our side, I think our kids being born were quite both of them, were quite, the births were turning points for Annelien and myself. From the time when she first got pregnant, we got in touch with wonderful individuals who started sort of challenging our preconceived ways of looking even at childbirth, etc. So we've always been independent-minded, for the both of us, and it's just snowballed. So by the time it was sort of deciding, should we go to preschool or should we DIY, it was a no-brainer. So for us, it's more that we started investigating more natural and call it organic alternatives to the lives we had been brought up to believe were the only lives.
Okay, thank you. I must tell you from my side, we had our youngest initially actually entered the school system. And we were, to a certain degree, it was probably more my wife that was a bit frustrated with, where things were going. And she then came up with the idea of starting to homeschool our kids. And that's probably where we then started investigating this and looking at this. Yeah. And Peter, what about you?
I was introduced to the idea of homeschooling about 12 years ago. And I was curious about it, but we didn't have children at the time. So about when my son was born, I was acutely aware of the father's duty in the education of children. And about 4 years ago, it eventually I sort of firmed up and eventually decided in favor of homeschooling, but I couldn't get my mind around how we were going to start with this. And then it happened that in about 2017, we traveled to the Eastern Cape for a family funeral to make arrangements in that. And my son's grade 1 teacher gave us reading, writing, and maths work to do for the week. And while I was sitting with my son doing the schoolwork, I realized actually we can do this. But I didn't want to impose this on my wife because I realized that she would have to bear most of the load. But it was interesting, we were kind of going in the same direction because halfway through my son's grade 1 year, she told me that she was ready to do this. And so 2 years ago, we started on this journey.
Okay. Just what did you actually see as the biggest challenge when you started home education?
I think the biggest challenge was telling family and friends. You know, they gave you all these skeptical looks, like, "Are you nuts? Do you know what you're doing?" And then initially, I also came to a point, you know, where as a father, I had to learn to I had to put my foot down. You know, especially with family and friends that sort of thought they knew better.
Yeah.
And then I felt at one stage I really had to protect my family against that kind of thing. And like they say in Afrikaans, I had to show them waar David die wortels gegrawe het, you know. I had to sort of draw a line. And I think the second thing that we, you know, as a father, you know, you always grapple with this issue. Is this the right thing for my kids? You know, are they going to turn out okay? You know, am I maybe not doing them in? But as our journey went on, I realized that we actually, you'll be doing a much better, you'll be doing more for them than what we would have done if we just placed them in school. And what helped me at that stage was the first expo I went to here in the Cape, CHE Expo. I went to all the curriculum providers, and I went to each table, asked them, okay, what are you selling? You know, what's your curriculum about? And then at the end of the day, I went home with a pack of pamphlets and papers from the expo, and I laid them all down on the table. And then after that, you know, just looking at all these pamphlets, I said to my wife, you know what, there's so much help out there. There's so much resources out there. You know, I really feel we can do this.
Yeah.
Actually, very interesting. You know, a lot of people have very similar journeys when it comes to home education. Just a quick, I would assume that most of you, and most of us anyway, our wives are the person driving the process on a day-to-day basis. You know, on the day-to-day basis, she's the one that basically, sort of, as you say, determines where what happens on that. I mean, if she sets let's say, some people determine a very loose curriculum, or this could be something that's very strict or something. You know, she's the one that sort of implements it on a day-to-day basis. But many of us, I assume, you know, we've got normal 9-to-5 jobs.
Yeah. Marwaan, I think our challenge was at the beginning a lot like what Victor said. There's a lot of formal curriculums and formal programs out there, and navigating your way through all of that. But eventually, I think that the most useful thing was early on, we discovered that you can actually tailor your own curriculum to meet the child's needs. And there's a lot of free resources and some stuff you can buy, and you can put all of this together. You don't necessarily have to follow a fixed program.
Yeah. No, of course. And I think that comes back down to a question like unschooling or deschooling. And how do you understand that concept?
I think if I can climb in there, in the primary school years, you know, we did a bit of an eclectic route, you know, where my wife took different curriculums. And then, you know, I would get home from work, and then we would sit at the supper table, and I would ask, you know, the children, what did they do today? And they'd say, well, Dad, we played. And to me, that was homeschooling, you know, playing. And my wife just sort of kept her hand on it and made sure that they didn't get too far behind with the maths and the reading and the writing. But and then as my older two got to the high school years, you know, we chose sort of a more formal curriculum, because we wanted our children to finish up school with matric, you know, equivalent, you know, with whichever option was available on the market at that stage. But, you know, for us as a family, it was about the holistic approach to the child. So my wife would generally focus on the academics, but as a family, you know, it was a lifestyle of learning. You know, I would get home and work, and we would discuss issues. I would discuss with my children issues at work, or we'd go out on an outing over the weekend. You know, it would just be learning and discussing things and driving in the car and asking questions. So it was, as a family, it was about learning, and then also focusing on the children's character and, you know, and how they deal with issues in life. You know, so we focused on those kinds of things as well. And that's where I would come in as a father. You know, I would also focus on the kids' character and and their growth as people.
Yeah.
Now, Marwaan, from my side, answering one question partially and then going on to the deschooling. Our greatest challenge here in Bloom was to assemble some sort of support network. I think it was perhaps because we started slightly too early, but by the time the momentum got going, it just became incredible. So at where we are at present, we are absolutely blessed with 450 count of adults and children in the primary school phase only. Onto the deschooling question, I think for me the greatest challenge was to deschool myself in terms of embracing the fact that for most human beings, also as adults, there's actually no. It's not a rule that you say to some other human being, listen, you're going to learn this now for a half an hour and then that then for half an hour, etc. It's to actually blend and integrate the entire life story as a learning journey. And I think as Victor said, sharing my work experience, sharing planning for the family, etc. with the children, every moment is a teachable moment. So it was almost the greatest change was in us as adults because we were all socialized as part of the standard schooling system. That's sort of the rootstock of our makeup, and we need to integrate it with the reality of today.
Yeah, no, 100%. Peter, what about you?
I came up with a definition 2 days ago. Deschooling, a rehabilitative process of unlearning all the pedagogical routines, procedures, practices, and processes required in the industrialized schooling environment.
I love it.
I think what happens is that, and especially when we engage with family that comes from a structured schooling environment, they actually don't understand the concept of a holistic learning. And that's basically what we involve in, And we come from an environment historically where schooling was based on the grades you got at the end of the day. And what we're trying to do is develop well-rounded individuals that have a passion for learning, no matter what it is. And I guess, in our environment, when we come across other kids in homeschooling, we see that, and we see that all the time.
Yeah, I think also the part of the deschooling process is to nurture that internal, self-directed learning discipline in our children.
Yes, of course. And I think the deschooling actually ends up, the problem is actually with us. We're the ones that have to have the deschooling, not necessarily the kids.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, one other question. Just many prior to homeschooling, of course, we have a couple that both parties sometimes work. And what you find now, when people make a decision to homeschool, normally the wife would then be the one that sort of stays at home to look after or to manage the actual homeschooling curriculum. How has that impacted you? If any of you had that?
Yeah, I must say, we were quite fortunate when myself and my wife got married. We initially decided that she would be a homemaker from the beginning. So when we got married, so we took a very traditional route when it came to the family and marriage, and she was a homemaker. So we were always used to just having the one income.
Yeah.
So going over into homeschooling, it wasn't a major financial change for us.
Sorry,
from our side, Marwaan, we both left our jobs when our firstborn was born, and I became. It's interesting how actually the both of us became much more entrepreneurial, built up businesses and consulting opportunities. So where we are now, I bring in about 2/3 of the household income, and my wife brings in about 1/3. And we also spend time at home with the kids like that. So we both have flexible arrangements in our different professional endeavors. So we've been homeschooled in the same episode or part, a period of life as our children did.
Okay, that's awesome, man. And Peter, in your case?
Yeah, I think the financial was just one of many reasons that drew us to consider home education. I think over the time had closed, and eventually we were kind of led, I believe, into this direction. With homeschooling, you don't necessarily save all that money in school fees. But the home budget is made much more flexible and much more discretionary. And now we're able to provide for extramurals and family trips in that, whereas before it was just taken up by school fees. So I think we've also had to make sacrifices in planning on one main income. Our wife does things here and there part-time, and she has various little ventures that she does. But that said, it's far more preferable than both of us working full-time, debt slaves while we pay for other people to raise our children. And so we've never looked back and had any doubts when going on this journey.
Okay, awesome. Just one other thing, and maybe this is a very interesting. How would you say your relationship has changed with your kids?
I think I'll answer that one. When we initially started homeschooling, and we first took our oldest daughter, my oldest daughter out, and then we took my son out. And when I had all my children home, the two small ones weren't born yet, but I had quite a tangible experience, call it emotional, call it spiritual, where I felt that something which I had lost, that was very dear to me, I had found again. And just that joy of something that you'd lost and that you'd found, I experienced that tangibly for about a week after I brought my children home, for lack of a better description, And then I also realized that as a father and as parents, our children have been entrusted to us and they are our responsibility. And also, I can see my relationship with my children is fantastic. There isn't a divided loyalty. Dad says this and the school says this. Mom says this and the teacher says this. We, as a family, we've got the same worldview. We've got the same morals. We've got the same faith. And it's really great. And we stand together as a family, and we've learned to communicate and much better, and it's just it's been a great all-round experience for us as a family. So to weigh up sending the child to school and to weigh up what we have now as a family, I wouldn't exchange the two, just because of the improvement and the blessing that we have in our relationships with each other.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor. That's really comforting. Werner, I assume the fact that it's very difficult for you to actually answer that because you haven't had kids in formal education.
Well, Marwaan, yes, in terms of we've never experienced the formal or industrialized education versus what we have now. However, we've changed so much. We had a more traditional school-like approach at the very beginning, sort of grade R, grade 1, and that soon washed away into just our children just bringing their talents to the table and saying, support me in becoming this or becoming that. Still very early days, but as Peter framed the brand new deschooling definition just now, my own definition for this type of household that we're part of is we are 4 strong, individual, talented individuals and very different individuals in one household, and let's see how best we can manage all these constructive tensions between us to make sure that each of us live our calling individually and collectively speaking. That's very generally, but I mean, it's the guiding principle.
Because it's all very positive.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Peter?
We've drawn closer together as a family. Home education affords us the flexibility to develop our own daily routine. So the mornings we wake up about 6 a.m., we do our devotions, maybe we exercise, we have breakfast together as a family. There's no school run. So my children are not sleep deprived. There's less sitting in traffic. There's lower fuel expenses. There's less stress. And I go to work. Mom and the children have their daytime routine and their extramurals. And in the evenings, we come together again. We have family worship. We sit down for supper. And then after supper, we may play board games or watch videos or listen to music or have conversations or read before bedtime. But our whole family life is just so much better enhanced and supported by the fact that we homeschool, and we can build that whole family togetherness and that family routine.
Okay. Peter, Werner, and Victor, I just want to say thank you. I mean, I think that's the end of part one, and I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you.